Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this episode of the On the Mark Financial Foreman podcast. We have a special guest today, Debbi DiMaggio from Corcoran Icon Properties in the Bay Area. Debbi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Very
Of
excited
course.
to chat with you and learn some more things about your business.
Likewise. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We met more recently, but I was definitely impressed by you and thought you'd be a great guest to share your insights on what's going on, and specifically with seniors. Why don't you introduce yourself first to the audience so they know who you are?
Great. My name is Debbi DiMaggio. I have been in real estate for over 35 years. I've been partners with my husband, Adam Betta, for that long. We started in San Francisco doing high-end rentals, and then we moved over to the East Bay, which we're in the Piedmont, Oakland, Berkeley area. So we're not far from Cal Berkeley, and we're just outside of San Francisco. So a lot of people who move into the city, they decide to raise a family, so they move over 20 minutes over the bridge to us, over the Bay Bridge. And one of the things I said when I was growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but one of the things I said I knew I did not want to do was real estate.
I
And
was
here
never going to get into sales, so I get it. Yeah.
my dad was in real estate, and now I realize when I go back, it was because he was always tied to the phone. There were no cell phones, there was no internet, there was, nothing. He was always tied to a landline, and I just, that just was too much. And so I said, and he was always on the phone, he was always busy. And then I tried a lot of different jobs, and I like to work hard and I love meeting people. So I ended up, it circled me back to real estate, which I still love today after 35 years.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I had a little detour out of college into the advertising world for a few years before I found real estate myself, and I always said, I don't know that I want to ever do sales, and not that I ever feel like I'm selling anyone anything.
Right.
Guiding and building relationships and whatnot. It's very different than the old mentality of what sales used to look like. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I didn't even know how to spell the word mortgage when I first got into the
I
industry
love it.
25 years ago. I'm like, silent T? What's the point of that? Who needs that letter? My boss told me you better learn how to spell the word if you're gonna do the job.
Right.
So it only took me one mistake and then I was good to go for the
Exactly.
next 25 years. But Debbi, you have a special designation specifically for working with seniors. So why don't you tell us a
Right.
little bit about that and what's involved in that and why it's important?
Great. So for the as long as I could remember, I've always enjoyed helping seniors. So only now in the last year have I gotten my senior real estate designation, which I had no idea there was so many services that are offered to seniors and baby boomers, just so many businesses that help seniors and that demographic. I've always just loved helping them because they're overwhelmed. They've been in their home for a really long time. It's very personal and they have so many memories and so much stuff. And so they're overwhelmed. They haven't sold in years. They probably maybe bought one or two homes in their life. So it's not something that they do every single day like we do. And so I've always loved helping that demographic. I created a seminar called Demystifying the Downsizing Process because I noticed when I would speak with them, they would be so overwhelmed. They'll like, one day we'll move. Oh, I don't even know where to begin. So I did a presentation. I brought in a mortgage broker and a few different people to also present with me. But I explained all the things we do and how we help them get ready to downsize and figure out where they're going next. And then in the last year, I got my certificate, and so many more people have opened up to me, different businesses. So I created most recently, we did a seniors next chapter is what I call it. So seniors next chapter, if you go to seniorsnextchapter.com, you can go to the page where I talked about all the different people who came and spoke and delivered information to the seniors at the workshop, from long-term care insurance to mortgage people. What was it? Shane, getting your will in
The
order,
trust
your
and estate.
estate planner. Because a lot of times people do not, they're not updated their trusts. So that was actually key. We had a lot of people calling because if one spouse passes, you have to update it again. If you buy anything new, it has to be updated. I mean, constantly. That
Yeah.
was actually a really good one. And then the person who helps you downsize, the person who actually goes into your house and helps you get rid of all those things, whether it's donating, sending to a family member, packing up, deciding what's going to go with you. And that could happen long before you sell as well. You don't have to wait to tidy your home before you
Right. Probably should,
sell.
right? Should
Yes.
happen
I was
early
telling
on.
my mom, I have someone for you.
I mean, I probably need it. I'm not quite a senior yet, but I
Same.
probably could use that person's help also.
Absolutely. I called my handyman today. I said, "Does anyone want a bed? I wanna put my treadmill in here and get rid of that bed."
Exactly. Well, so it sounds like you're coming from a place of education and service, which is something we always pride ourselves on, and those are usually the
Yes.
people we connect with the most because there are so many people out there trying to take advantage of seniors. It's really, really unfortunate.
Yes. That's terrible.
That's why the trusted advisors are so, so critical. But tell me a little bit about the designation itself. It's called SRES. What's involved? Like, what do you have to do in order to get that designation?
It was education. I took some courses and you passed some tests and, it what it was just very informative, but it was classes and you pass a test. And then so much information came after that with all these different services. So I'm still diving into it, and you've been doing it as a designation longer than me, so you probably have more insight than I do. It's kind of just how I guess one of the main things you learn is or they talk about, which you kind of know intuitively, is they don't want to be pressured. They could be stubborn. You need to come from a point of caring and education. When I held the senior event, I didn't want to do it at my real estate office because I didn't want them to think we wanted to just sell their house. So I purposely put a packet together, and one of my brochures is actually called Aging in Place. So, this is something they can use and refer to as they live and age in their home. But hopefully one day when they do decide to move, they think of me. But I wasn't able to find a place that would work with the date. So we did it in the office, which is right in our little town of Piedmont. So it worked great and people love our office. But I wanted to make it at an independent place so they wouldn't think a neutral place. So, and that was one of the things they talked about in the course.
Yeah. Well, and you brought a lot of people in from a lot of different perspectives, the estate planning, the
Hmm.
move management, all these things are so critical because like you said, and these are the common threads we see with our clients as well. They've lived in the home for decades. The houses are not show ready. Usually they need some updating, but also the biggest challenge I would imagine if they're, let's say, downsizing into a smaller home is the sequencing of like
Right.
how do you do all that? They have a home that needs decluttering. There's too much stuff, but they can't really get rid of the stuff until they're really out and settled somewhere else. So how do you and sellers aren't
Yeah.
really going to be likely to accept an offer that's contingent upon selling, I would imagine, especially
Right.
in the Bay Area of all markets.
It's a
That's the
chicken
toughest
and
one.
the egg.
Yeah.
It's a chicken and egg with everyone. So first I start, this is my wish list. This is how it's usually done. I try to be very careful with them in the way I speak. It's it's up to you, but this is how the process is done. Well, first of all, we have to find you where you're going to go because 99.9% of our clients do not live in the home. They move, then we prepare it for market. And then we sell it, and it's a pretty quick process, but they have to be out. So we have to do all that work to get them out beforehand. So one of the people who spoke at our workshop was a preferred placement consultant. So this person helps you if you don't know where you're going to go. She can look in different facilities, different community living spaces that depending on what your needs are, independent living or do you need assistance? So it's really about talking them through the process and where are you going to go. Then this new program that we have, which is amazing. So I'm working with a woman now, Velma. We've been working together for years. She's a friend. We go out to lunch. We're going out for our birthdays on Thursday. She's
Ah, great.
89. She's healthy, but she doesn't have family. So she's a little nervous. I want to stay, but I shouldn't be driving as much. So she has identified a place that she wants to go to. She's waiting for someone to pass before she can get a spot
An
at
opening.
the
Sure.
opening. So she's been downloading for years and she's done a great job, but she's still overwhelmed. So I said, Velma, once you're ready, we've already identified which pieces of furniture you want to go. And we know which items you're going to get rid of. She wants to take books down. We've been taking books instead of donating them. She's sold some of her books. So it's kind of all these little outings that we do together. Some of the things were built-ins, and I explained to her, no one's going to want these built-ins. So those will just go away. what other things you want to donate. And I said, I can send it to the consignment place. I'll do all that for you. Other people who have homes full of stuff will come in. I have a person who comes in and she helps with the moving. You take a sticky, it might be a yellow sticky, a pink sticky, a blue sticky, and this is donate. If you put the blue sticky, it might be donate. This is going with me. This is going to, a friend's house or a sister or brother's house or whatever, family member. So it's really, and we've been walking through this process for a long time. So it's really a lot of counseling. We're very much counselors. And so when she is ready, I told her, you'll move out into your place. I will help get rid of the things because she's really overwhelmed about getting rid of the things. I
Yeah,
said, we'll help. I'll help you get rid of it. I have the people. And then we have a program called Spruce Home Advantage where for no upfront cost, I'll be able to get it painted and staged and any repairs made. I also like to change light fixtures to update a home. So I will facilitate all that and she won't pay until we close escrow.
that's great.
Zero upfront costs. And that's a big thing for anyone, but especially seniors who, are usually on a tight budget.
They are, yeah. The common thread that we see is a lot of them. Their house is their biggest asset,
Right.
sometimes one of their only significant assets, and that's where it gets tricky because you have to have money to move into these communities. Usually, you got to pay,
Exactly.
your first month's rent, or if it's a continuing care community, you might actually have a pretty large entry fee as
Right.
well.
Because some of what I learned on taking these tours were some are just monthly, month to month rentals, but there's also retirement communities that you pay, put a big sum, you're buying into them and it's a bigger chunk
Right.
that they take.
Yeah, and those usually require a different type of financing than someone who
Yes.
just has to pay for their first few months. But
Right.
there's still an overlap. So we find a lot of these families don't have one of the reasons they get stuck and the all the stuff and the thought of moving and the overwhelming nature of, just being at a different stage of life where you're making that transition into senior living
Right.
at the same time as trying to sell your home is sometimes just overwhelming emotionally, and but
Absolutely.
the financial aspect is also a challenge when you don't have a lot of liquid cash available to do that. So that's kind of where we come in, is trying to help people navigate that and determine what sort of funding they need, because the other helpful thing is that if you've owned a home in any of the areas that you work in and
Right.
most areas around the country, if you've owned a home for 30, 40, 50 years, you have a lot of found money in the form of appreciation that now the home is worth a lot more than
Right.
what you probably bought it for.
Absolutely. One of the
So
people I brought in, this is the other thing you don't really realize, or an average agent wouldn't really understand is a lot of times the senior, let's say, they don't even know what they need, right? So it's a fine line between being pushy and getting too involved in their business. But so Velma the other day was, I just don't know how much money I'm going to have, how long my money will last me. And so she did prompt me by asking me. She didn't know I was going to have an answer. I said, "Oh, I'm going to bring David in if you want to meet David." So I said, we can do it at your house or my office. And she said, why don't we go to your office? So I picked her up, brought her down to my office, and she met with David, the financial planner, and who is also a good friend and a client of mine. And he's so gentle. And she ended up loving him. And she could be very stubborn and very opinionated, but she loved him. And they talked about, what did you do? What kind of income do you have? What is your house worth? And basically he said, so your house is your biggest nugget. And so now they're going to meet, he'll review with her. And so I think she'll feel so much more comfortable after knowing what she has. She can decide, am I going to get a 1 bedroom or a 2 bedroom? And she can move within the facility from a 1 to a 2 or vice versa. So it's just what we're doing, and what you do is we're educating people, we're giving them resources that they didn't know were available to them, right?
yeah, and the generation that's aging now is also, in my opinion, a do-it-yourself
Yes,
generation.
that's true.
It didn't have all the professional support that maybe the current, middle-aged people have.
That's so
Financial
true.
advisor, estate planning attorney, a lot of them are scrambling to get all that done later in life,
Yes,
and it's usually, in my experience, it's around a home transition time,
right.
because now all of a sudden, if you sell your home, if you've lived in it for 30, 40 years, you might have all of a sudden $1 million or more of money that you didn't used to have. So you didn't have anyone to help you manage it.
Right.
But if you manage it correctly, it will last you a lot longer than if you put it in a checking account,
Right. Right.
or hopefully not under the mattress, because that would a
Exactly.
lot of money to put under the mattress. But those professionals are so critical, and to have all of
Absolutely.
them weigh in, we're big, big proponents of having a full financial team, because I don't want to overstep. We deal
No.
with financial information all the time, every day,
Right.
but it's not my place to tell people what to do with their money once they sell.
I
You know,
mean,
we
they need to have a CPA, they need someone, to file their taxes, they need someone to financially plan for them, and most of them, like we were saying, they maybe didn't have someone, or they didn't think it was big enough that they needed. I think you also need a power of attorney. You need to have an attorney, some people don't have significant others or people that are around for them, and they need to have their home or in a trust, and they need to have a trust so it doesn't go to probate. So
Right.
there's so many people that we need, but it's so true. Here in the way we live today, it's like there's an app for that, I always say. But that generation just did everything. "What do you mean there's someone who could do that?" I said, "There's someone who
Right.
could do anything."
Yeah, they've pretty much invented everything you might need, but it takes a village is
It
the
takes a
point here.
village.
It's not just
Absolutely.
one advisor, because you might miss something really important, like the accountant and the
Right.
financial advisor, or maybe the estate attorney might have a different perspective on the taxes and the timing at which you sell your home, and, relative to capital gains tax, because that's one of the biggest issues that's rarely understood by seniors, is that they built up so much equity in their home and they're going to sell the home. That's their plan to pay for their elder care needs, but they need to also be aware of what the capital gains tax implications are, just
Right.
so they know, yes, you're going to receive X number of dollars, but you're going to get a bill from the IRS
Right.
for a portion of that. So you need to be mindful and adjusting those numbers, obviously, with your financial advisor. But
Absolutely.
that's why it's so important to have all of these people, because they come at it from a different perspective, and they might be able to give you one little nugget of advice or information that could change how you might approach things with the
Right.
other professionals potentially.
Absolutely.
And these nuances are more complicated also. We did a great interview that's going to be releasing soon with somebody about solo aging. And it's
That's a
even
good one.
some really unique things to think about, as far as like who to designate as your beneficiary.
Mhm.
Even if you have a family member, sometimes it's not great to assign that person as your trustee, or is anyway, I'm not here to promote that
Yeah.
episode.
Right.
But just some really unique things, and if you're not getting proper financial advice, you could make some really bad decisions that could
Abs
impact you pretty substantially down the road.
Absolutely. I have
Yeah.
a question that all pertains to seniors and them moving. So, there's seems to be 2 ways. They either get a bridge loan so they can well, if they're gonna buy something, they could get a bridge loan if they're gonna go buy into a retirement community, or they could well, if they wanna stay, they could do a reverse mortgage. So, if someone wants to stay in their home, do you recommend a reverse mortgage, or what are some options that you recommend to seniors?
Well, it's hard to say if we'd recommend a situation without knowing the circumstances,
Sure,
but there are some downsides to a reverse mortgage. Bridge loans are a kind of a whole different animal, because that's designed short term for short term financing needs to fund, like you said, an entry fee to a continuing care community, or potentially just the initial funds that a family member might need. Maybe they have a long term care policy that has an elimination period where they don't have the funds to pay for the care until that kicks in. So there's short term financing needs. And then there's the bigger picture of, yes, if somebody wants to stay in the home, which by the way is a requirement of the reverse mortgage, you have to stay in the home even long after you close on the loan and you're well into it. If you need to move in, if your care needs change and you need to move to assisted living or memory care or whatever it may be, you have to find a way to pay off that loan. So, the reverse mortgage, in my opinion, the best use of it is when you have, obviously, you're staying at home, you're aging
Okay.
in place. That's been your choice because you have to maintain it as your primary residence in order to maintain the loan. But
Okay.
also when there's memory care issues, because one of the challenges that the government has tried to step in and help with is helping seniors avoid equity theft, meaning somebody else signing on a loan for someone who doesn't really have the mental capacity to know what the other person's doing or that that money will actually be used to benefit the senior. So traditional lending is a little tricky when it comes to someone else signing on your behalf because they don't want to be a party to that person stealing money from a senior, especially one that has memory care issues that may not really know what's going on.
Right.
So reverse mortgage are more friendly to that type of arrangement as long as all the proper documentation is in order. But let's take that piece of it out. Let's say it's just somebody that wants to age at home and
Right.
they're fully capable mentally. There are some downsides to a reverse mortgage. My number one is what we call the compounding loss of equity, which means what? Let me take a step back. The best thing about a reverse mortgage is that you don't have to make an out of pocket monthly payment. And the worst thing about a reverse mortgage is that you don't have to make a monthly out of pocket payment. It's the
Okay.
same. It's the best and the worst. The reason it's the worst is because what happens is, let's say you're 3 years into the loan and you haven't made a payment, right? Because that's the whole point of reverse mortgage for most people. What's happening is 3 years later, you're paying interest on interest on interest for every month that you didn't pay interest leading up to that point. And so what happens is kind of the opposite of when you have an investment account, which you want to be compounding in your favor.
Okay.
The longer you're in a reverse mortgage, the faster you're losing equity because you're paying interest on so many months or years of prior interest that wasn't paid. So that's why it's good and bad. It's great
Okay.
because you don't want to have to make the out of pocket payment, but you're paying a bit of a premium. So that's one thing. The second thing is the owner occupancy requirement, where you have to stay in the home. And if your care needs change, you might end up in a situation where you need to move out, or maybe home care is just getting, it's insanely expensive.
Very
And some
expensive.
people still have the means to do it or they leverage their home to be able to pay for it. But if you need full-time care, 24 hours a day, you could easily be talking 30 to $50,000 a month. And that's a lot of capital to burn through, especially if you need it for several years. You're talking about
Wow.
getting into the millions of dollars for
Right.
care. So some people might choose, may, whether it be financially or care needs, to want to move into assisted living or memory care, but then you are stuck having to figure out how to pay off that loan, which usually sometimes will force a sale because they don't have other means to be able to pay for the care needs. And then you might trigger the capital gains tax that you ideally don't want to do. There's something called the step up in basis, not to get into tax advice here because I'm not a
Right.
CPA, but if you sell the home after the senior passes, you might completely avoid all of the capital gains tax depending on the numbers versus selling it before. You might be subject to all those capital gains. So if you move out of the home and now you have roughly 6 months to pay off that reverse mortgage, you may have no choice but to sell the home and trigger those taxes, which may or may not be the right choice,
Right.
but we have alternatives for that as well. So
And
it's, yeah, flexibility is a little bit of an issue.
right.
They also don't let you, reverse mortgages don't let you leverage a high percentage of the value of the home. So if you already have a mortgage on the property that's of any substantive size, sometimes you can't really get much out of a reverse mortgage, and then the closing costs and interest rates are high.
Oh,
So
wow.
there are definitely some downsides and there are alternatives. That's kind of what we focus on, is even though we can do reverse mortgages, they're not
Right.
my number one choice.
And what are your other options for seniors?
It depends on the circumstances, but we have lines of credit. So a lot of our products for seniors, or really all of them, are designed with the idea that you can't strictly be driven by income for loan approval, which is how, if you or I went to apply for a home loan on a new property, that would be the first question we'd be asked, is how much income do you have? Because I want to make sure you can afford to make the monthly payments. So with senior lending in particular, you have to have products that don't require that to be the primary source of approval. So we have some HELOC products, for example, where somebody just wants access to the equity, but they don't actually want to borrow the money immediately or they want to borrow it over time might be a good solution. And we can use, traditional income like Social Security or pension, and then add in additional income based on any money they've saved up in IRAs or anything like that. So a little more flexible products. We have loans that don't require a statement of employment or income that may not have had seniors in mind when they first designed these products. I think they were probably designed for entrepreneurs more than anything, or people who are self-employed that maybe just started their own business or something like that. But it applies to seniors as well. So there's, without going through a laundry list, there's a bunch of them that all have the same common thread, that income is not the primary reason for approval.
Uh-huh.
And so we try to match up the client need with the right loan. Like if they don't need all the money right away and they don't want to have a lump sum that they then invest, hopefully with a financial advisor. Again, going back to having the full financial team, but they just want to have access to equity, then a line of credit might be the right choice. If they're really looking at long term financing and don't want to have fluctuating interest rates, then maybe pulling out a lump sum with one of these unique products and then investing that money to offset the cost of the interest over time might be a better solution. So we have a number of different solutions. I don't want to go through every single
Right.
one of them,
Yeah.
but they're all right for different circumstances and different client needs and profiles. Some of them may qualify for better loans than others. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing, but that's where we work with clients and hopefully their advisor team. And if not, we, just like you, try to help them build that network of people that will support them in different ways.
So do you find that the seniors you're helping, I'm sure their referrals are coming through through real estate agents. So do you find that people are taking money out of their home to move into their retirement community and that's where they're funding it? Or, I mean, I guess you wouldn't be, I mean, the next question, would they be selling their home to move into the retirement home? And
Right.
then how do you even, what's your role there?
Well, yes, we do get a lot of referrals from agents who are focused on seniors, but we also get them from financial advisors. We get them from home care companies, people who's where the intention is to stay home and
Okay.
not to sell. Or sometimes, an accountant, if they're heavily involved, or an estate attorney might say, there's too much capital gains tax
Okay.
here. So even if the senior needs to move out, let's look at another alternative for pulling out equity from the home. But from a financial planning perspective, if we're looking at like short-term bridge financing just to help someone get into a new living
Right.
situation, the last thing you want to do is liquidate investments and trigger a capital gains tax on investments or money that you've saved up for a short-term need. So that's why bridge loans in particular are really helpful for the senior community, is because you don't want to pay all these taxes. Then you sell your home, then you put the money right back into those investments. That would be
Right.
silly. So that's where bridge financing can be a nice tax play. And also when it comes to maybe paying for care over time, I mean, we've had some pretty crazy stories that we've heard of people that, had appreciation of like millions of dollars for the $4 or $5 million, and they sold their home at 97 years old when they probably had 6 months left of life, and triggered all these capital gains tax to pay for care. So, we, if had we known about that, we could have given a loan to be able to pay for the care, and then that, $1 million check that went to the IRS could have gone to the family instead.
Right.
So sometimes our products are used for tax avoidance or tax strategy, not tax evasion. That's illegal. But tax strategy is perfectly fine.
No, that's the thing, people, that's the issue is trying to help these seniors before those sorts of things where they end up paying $1 million in taxes. It's educating not only the seniors, it's educating the people who are going to be the family members who are going to be taking care of that senior, because many of them do not know any of this and we're always learning, right? So it's really about educating these people who are going to be taking care of the senior and they don't know. So it's
They
that's
don't.
so I say that the workshop is for seniors and those supporting seniors because they need to know for themselves as well as for their their parents, let's say.
They do, and even professionals in the network, if they don't
Mhm.
necessarily focus on seniors, they may not be fully aware of all the little nuances to what to do, and they may not be prepared themselves. I actually did a presentation recently in front of a bunch of financial professionals,
Uh-huh.
and even they had no real idea of what the current cost of care is. That, an entry
Crazy.
level assisted living could be over $10,000 a month. And I said, look at your client base. How many of them can afford that for 5 years or 10
Right.
years? They're going to run out of money. What's the most valuable asset? Usually the home that they've lived in for 30 or 40 years. So,
Right.
and people oftentimes don't look at their home as an asset the same way that they look at an IRA account or an investment account or cash accounts.
Right.
But it can be used in the same way. So, and sometimes that can help you with tax planning and other things. So it's nuanced, but you have to have an understanding of how all those pieces fit together in order to guide a family correctly.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. The families are usually surprised.
Yes.
What we find, tell me if you've seen this as well, is that people oftentimes don't make the move, the not necessarily the physical move, but whatever adjustment they're making, whether it be financially or moving to a new location until they're in a crisis mode.
That is so true. I was telling my parents are in great shape right now, knock on wood. They're 87. And so I was, where do you guys want to go? I mean, they live in their 3-story house and the family house I grew up in, and there are a lot of stairs and they go up and down constantly. And I'm like, where do you like, they're fully healthy. So I'm, well, and they have right mind. So where do you want to go? Like, well, I don't know, I'm fine here. And it's like, well, at some
Right.
point, you're going to need to go somewhere.
Yeah, you're
And
fine here right
in-home
now.
care is horrible
Right.
because I had a friend they spent over $1 million in in-home care. The mother was in not good shape. She was in bed for probably 2 of the last years and just had in-home care, and she was not living, she was in bed, and it cost so they had to take out all kinds of loans and eventually pay that back after she passed. And then, like you said, I had no idea until I started going out with Velma kind of on a field trip for me to learn, for her to get out because she lives alone. Home care could be 7,000 a month, 10,000, 20,000. It's expensive. So people really, how are we gonna finance this? Are we gonna, finance through the house? Are you gonna sell your house? What are your options? And I think that's when they just get so like, "Oh my god, I don't even know what to do."
Overwhelmed. Yeah, especially when
Overwhelmed.
they're not prepared for what the numbers look like, because it
Right.
could be just the numbers alone of the cost of care can be overwhelming for people, and then they think about the move, and it's a lot at a time when stress is a factor.
Right.
It's a factor for anyone who's moving. I've been through plenty of
Right.
moves myself.
Yeah.
It's stressful, but when you can't physically do it all yourself and it just seems mentally overwhelming, that just puts up a huge barrier. So then people wait and they procrastinate
Right.
until there's some immediate need. And imagine, knock on wood, my parents are both in good shape as well, but at some point, maybe both of them will need care. So now
Right.
you're talking about potentially doubling the cost
Right.
beyond what it would cost for one person. And then it's astronomical.
I mean, if I had to recommend, so Velma has kind of been my little test case. We've been for years looking at places, and there's a company called Preferred Placement here, and I'm sure they're all placement consultants who kind of help you. What sort of a care do you need? Independent living, or what is it that you actually need? Memory care, all the different, do you want to live urban or suburban, et cetera? So I'd say if I had to give advice to someone like our age, or, someone who will be taking care of our parents, and also for us to just know about, is to meet with, you can go on your own or you can get a consultant, and they don't charge you. Some consultants, I suppose, they don't charge you. They get paid by the facility. So to go out and look at a place that costs 5, a place that costs 7,000, a place that costs 10 or 12,000, go to, you know, places in your area that you'd want to live if you're not going to move across state to be near a family member, let's say. But if you're going to stay in your area, look at a few places to know, and while you're in your right mind, know what's available and what it includes: meals, activities, transportation to the grocery store. What does it include? Activities. But I would say that is, while your parents are in good enough shape, have them understand where they might go or how it will feel if a spouse dies and then the other spouse is left and they'll be alone in the house. And that's tough, to be in your home alone after you've had someone with you for most of your life. So I'd say
Sure.
do the research ahead of time while you're healthy.
Yeah, and for those adult children listening who are probably the primary people listening to
Yes.
this podcast, you want them to be part of the decision making
Right.
process, and if you wait too long, they might not be able to be, and that's disheartening. If you procrastinate, that's the cost of procrastination, and that could be
Absolutely.
beyond the financial costs and the lack
Right.
of, less lending options and things like that that you might have to choose from in that crisis moment. Just from an emotional standpoint of the family, you can save yourself a lot of grief and just knowing that they had some say in where they wanted to go and what type of environment they wanted to be in, so that you don't have to feel
Yes.
like you made that decision and then maybe second guess yourself or feel
Right.
guilty or whatever
Exactly.
in making that decision for them. There's so many considerations for seniors, and that's why people need people like you who will look after them and not force them into selling. I think that's always a
Right.
senior's biggest concern. If I call a real estate agent, they're going to tell me to sell, and if I call a mortgage lender, they're going to tell me to take a loan, and
Right.
everyone's got a different angle. But when you come from a place of abundance
Right.
and service and education, that's when, listen, we'll just lay out the options for you,
Right.
and you can decide which direction you want to go, or do none of it.
Right.
But at least you know what the options are, and that's why we want to get this information out to people, is to let
Absolutely.
them know what do you need to do to prepare, how can you do that, when should you do that, and you've got a lot of great insights that you've shared today, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. And if Debbie, if people want to find you, they want to move to the Bay Area, they want to sell in the Bay Area, and they want somebody who they know that they can trust, what's the best place for people to find you?
They can call me at 510-146777. They can go to my website at debbidimaggio.com. You can pretty much Google me and find me anywhere. And what I like to say is I'm always here to answer questions. You don't need to buy or sell a house with me today or in 5 years, but if you have a question, please call me. Doesn't matter where you live. I'm connected to people throughout the providers throughout the country. From my BNI group referred me their mother who lived in South Carolina, and I connected them with NAPO, which is helps to downsize, helps you downsize, and you can talk to a consultant. So it doesn't matter where you live. If you have a question, I'm happy to help and answer that.
Yeah, that's great. There you go. Case in point, coming from a place of influence. So the world needs more people like you, and there's a lot of seniors who need that type of support. So thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today and your insights. And I'm looking forward to engaging more with you and just helping families who can put this like protective bubble around them together
Right.
and make sure that they end up on the right path, whatever that is. So
Thank you.
Debbie, thank you so much again, and thank you to our audience today for joining the On the Mark Financial Forum and podcast. Continue to bring you great episodes with great guests like Debbie, who will talk about topics that are important to you and your family. So thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.